Thank you, Judy. Judy takes care of me. She gave me a cough drop when I was coughing. Thank you for that helped. Well, anyway, it's wonderful to see all of you here coming out on this evening, and we're very excited to see you all. And I also want to thank the organizers, Lori Van Cancer and Ronnie Monroe, for all their huge work and the work of other people also. Well, I'm going to talk to you about health concerns of living on or near the pipeline. And my name is Beth Elliot. My background is in biochemistry when I was in college, and then pharmacology when I was in grad school in Wisconsin. And I'm a retired professor from UW-Madison, so I have some retirement time to dabble in other things. So that's what I'm doing now. I also will be happy to answer any questions afterward, and there is also a list at the end of my talk of documents that you, if you want to see some of them, a lot of them are just freely available, and I'll give you the URLs, or there's one that I can just send you as a PDF if you have some interest. So I want to give you all the information that you need. Well, we've all seen these types of pictures, these birds who have been drenched with oil, and this was Enbridge oil from the Kalamazoo oil spill. I do not know the fate of these particular birds. Some birds survive, some don't. We just can't always save them. I mean, not that I've been out washing birds, but you can't always save them. But what we're thinking about today is something different. We're thinking about risk to people. Think about the people in your lives, your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, all sorts of people whose own health could, in fact, possibly be affected if there were to be a tar sand spill. Well, how much health risk is actually posed by a tar sands spill? We don't have a good handle on this, unfortunately. Probably it's very different depending on your age and your medical condition. If you're older and you're frail, you're probably at higher risk. If you already have respiratory problems, you're probably at higher risk. It also depends on how long you've been exposed. If there is a pipeline leak and you do breathe some of the vapors, depends on how long you were in the vicinity before you were evacuated or able to get away. The data collection is poor because if there is a pipeline that bursts, there's a lot of activity around, dealing with that directly, getting the oil out of the way and doing what you can to repair the pipeline to shut that down. But there's not necessarily a team of doctors going through the community and gathering information and helping people on the spot there. So it's not that top priority. It's also not like drugs or diseases where, the FDA looks at risks and benefits. And both Elizabeth and Walt were talking about risks and benefits. And there, you do get to kind of weigh that risk and benefit and decide, is this a medicine I want to take, even though my doctor's prescribed it? Or diseases where people have been able to study long-term. What's the course of a disease when people have it? Also, long-term risks are naturally harder to understand than short-term risks. If a little exposure of benzene will, make your eyes water, well, how much does it take that it might possibly increase your risk of something worse happening to you down the line? We just don't have enough information, basically. And one of the things I'd like to refer back also to the previous speakers is that I was on a conference call last week with a national group where they reported that of the Keystone XL pipeline, approximately 66% of that oil is to be exported to foreign countries in Asia, Europe, and elsewhere. So that benefit doesn't even all stay here. And then I asked a question. I said, what about Enbridge? And they said the data on Enbridge is similar. So again, just to reiterate, the benefit does not necessarily come all to us. Okay. What about chemicals used to dilute tar sands? Elizabeth said that tar sands are very, very thick. They're like peanut butter or even stiffer, and you need to dilute them with maybe 20 to 30% of lighter organic chemicals. Now, this list of organic chemicals has been proprietary. Oil companies would not give that list out. But Enbridge actually did provide the list to the Dane County Board, and that's something I will share with you too, all the different chemicals. The one I'm highlighting here in red is benzene, because it's the one that has, well, you can see here, it's got the lowest safety limit, just 0.1 parts per million is considered to be a level you should not be around. But there are other diluents too. These aren't all added individually to the pipeline mixture. They come together as a unit when you take certain kinds of oil and refine it. But it helps thin the oil so that they can get through the pipelines. But we do know these, now we see it. Benzene, yes, is there, and we were told that for sure. Benzene is very volatile, it evaporates very well. You can see little molecules there that are evaporated. There's its structure on the right-hand side that has a lot to do with its toxic effects. It is a known carcinogen, and that's a symbol for being cancer-causing. It is a teratogen, there's a symbol for that. And it also has acute effects, which I will speak with you about next. The Michigan Department of Public Health did a pretty good job, I think, assessing after the tar sands spill in the Kalamazoo River. They went and looked at a lot of different communities. They looked at like 4 different communities that were fairly near where the pipeline ruptured, and they collected data on people. Had you felt ill? What kind of symptoms did you had, et cetera, et cetera. And then they looked at a community that was far enough away that these people wouldn't have been exposed. And they did all the right stuff, you know, that you're supposed to do in scientific papers. They corrected for age and previous health risk and all that kind of thing. So you're looking at pretty solid data there. And I added up for the 4 communities what's shown in red here. They found that there were of the 230, there were 320 people on the bottom there that had any kind of a symptom. That was 58% of the people that they queried. And the number without any symptoms was only 42%, obviously what was left from 100%. So you can see most people who were in the areas had some kinds of symptoms. And the most common symptoms were headache, breathing difficulty, cough, nausea, and vomiting. Here's the comparison community in blue, and you can see that 95.6% of those people were not reporting such symptoms. The other thing that strikes me in looking at this is that if you look for the exposed communities, a lot of them had like 2 or 3 symptoms or even more symptoms. So there's a price to be paid there, at least short term, for people feeling bad, needing to go to their doctor and seeing what's going to happen there. Okay. Let me switch gears a little bit here. There was an article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association a few years ago about the British Petroleum Gulf oil disaster, Deepwater Horizon, and it talked about others too. And it listed even more side effects that people could have, not just headache, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, cough, and respiratory problems, but also eye irritation, skin irritation, or allergic response, and also phototoxicity, where it could make your eyes more sensitive. The other thing that is being recognized more and more is that dispersants, as Elizabeth had mentioned, which makes the spill look not so bad because it kind of breaks it all up so you just don't see the oil on top of the water. A lot of that just sinks. And I actually looked into this quite a bit, and in the BP oil spill, it's estimated that 30 to 35% of that oil is there now. It's in the water. It's on the land. Huge amount. So dispersants actually add to that, like staying in the community. Even though the BP accident was not a tar sand accident, it didn't just sink to the bottom the way tar sands oil do. For cleanup crews, on top of acute physical effects, other people have studied that these people can have higher incidence of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety up to years afterward. So whether that was directly from the chemical or just the experience going through that, it's very tough working in those cleanups, of course. And again, I can provide this JAMA article to you. It's just 2 pages, so it's very readable. What about more intense and long-term exposure? And hopefully none of us could even face that here in the Midwest, but if people are working in Alberta, and Elizabeth pointed out to you, there's huge industrial tar sands activity there. They have longer and greater exposure to toxins, including benzene, other organic chemicals, heavy metals, arsenic, lots of bad players, and hydrogen sulfide, which also has a lot of dangerous effects. And they did see elevated rates of blood and solid organ cancers observed in this group. So for that longer term, heavier duty exposure, people are quite concerned. So just to kind of summarize, and that is my last slide, tar sands and the diluents, those diluting, thinning agents, these are not a natural part of the above-ground environment. They naturally exist way down below when the dinosaurs died and gave themselves up for our cars, I suppose. But dinosaurs died, and you know what happened to them. They became oil and so forth. But they're not a natural thing that should be floating around in our rivers or in our backyards. It's important for us all to maintain awareness and report immediately if you suspect a spill or a leak. Sometimes in Wisconsin, it's even happened. A woman looked out her window, the oil was spewing out of the ground because there was a rupture in the pipeline there. Sometimes it will be by smell. If you live very near the pipeline and you smell anything unusual, kind of an oily or petroleum-like smell or any odd smell, or even hydrogen sulfide, which is kind of a rotten egg smell. If you smell anything that just is not right, that's something you should report right away. And also avoid or minimize any exposure to yourselves, your family, your loved ones, especially pregnant women, for example. Because up to 25% of the tar sands that spills out of a pipeline, if it does rupture, it can evaporate very quickly. I've worked with benzene in the lab myself. I know what it smells like. This is, I'm pretty old, and it was way back when they probably didn't even know it was that dangerous, and I seem to have gotten away with it. But I've smelled it. It actually doesn't smell bad, but it has a characteristic odor. It has a petroleum-like odor. And up to 25% of those low molecular weight compounds, they volatilize into the air, and that's a lot. If my figures are correct, it's 2 million gallons per hour that this pipeline will carry when it's finally up to its final size. And then, so don't hesitate to seek care if you have any symptoms, and heaven forbid if there were to be a pipeline anywhere around here, and also communicate with your first responders. So there are URLs on the next page. I'll be happy to share these slides with anybody if they want them. And I've got some, so if you want any of these, you can write to me, and I will send you any of these that you would care to know more about. I'm happy to answer your questions about these as well. Thank you for listening.
And